Blake, you had some we've jumped around so much,
I
I don't
have a
even care
question
now.
for
You had
Tim.
some very specific questions for Tim.
I did, but I do have one outside of those specific ones we talked about. How did you get into the world of true crime?
That was
'Cause you have quite a range of experience
yeah,
here.
yeah, you're right. I was looking for a project to do in 2013, and Lance, who I had actually, yeah, I had moved back to Boston for a period of time in 2012, and me and Lance started working together a lot closer. I mean, we worked together before I moved to California, and we stayed in touch. We did some things together when I was out there, but it's hard to work together continuously. But when I moved back to Boston for about a year, 6 months, so somewhere in that range, me and Lance started working together closely, and that ended up leading, I guess, him to deciding to want to do a documentary. It was really him who got into Maura Murray's case. Sorry if it takes me a while to say this stuff. I'm trying to get to my memory about it.
I'm going to help you out here, because I really, for our listeners who are the 10 people, they may not know who Maura Murray is. Can you give a quick background? And then when we have Lance back on, I really want to dive into this more specifically, because Blake, if that's all right with you too, and just north and south, Blake, north and south.
Well, you submit the request.
Okay, in triplicate, or did I just do the double this time?
No, make sure it's collated.
Andy James, man who plays too much. Tim, forgive me. Please,
no
more serious topic. Could you please summarize? I know it's hard. I hate to say that, summarize more story,
it's okay.
But yeah.
So Maura Murray is a real person who was 21 years old when she went missing. She was in North Haverhill, New Hampshire, we think, on February 9th, 2004, when her car spun out on like a 90-degree turn on a kind of a rural road, sort of a mountain pass in the White Mountains of New Hampshire. And the accident wasn't bad. The windshield was broken, but the car didn't start again. She wasn't able to start the car again. And so she left. She left the car. The car was locked. A bus driver came by and asked her if she needed help. She said no. The bus driver happened to live right there on the corner, no more than a few hundred yards away. He went home and called 911. That was the second 911 call. The first one was right at the corner of the house. And they were looking out the window. There's sort of an older couple, and they were cooking dinner, making dinner. It was like around 7:30 p.m.
Was she clearly injured?
No. This is a Monday night around 7:30.
911 if she was away from the vehicle. I'm so sorry, Tim.
I think she spun out, and in the description in the 911 call, the woman who called, the first woman said, or the first lady said that that the woman, the person was in the car, and there was a flurry of activity around her trunk. I think it's such a crazy turn, and especially in the winter. It's probably not that uncommon. I'm sure this kind of thing happens several times a year up there. Mm-hmm. So and there's a ditch, and there's like a 2-foot, like a little kind of a ditch before the woods. So she was pretty clearly stuck. She needed some help. Now, I don't know. I wish she went out there. Honestly, I wish her or her husband went out there. But Maura did turn down help from the bus driver. He was a big guy, bearded guy, but then he called the police, and the police were there like no more than like 10 minutes later, and she was gone. Never been seen or heard from again. That was 2004.
10 minutes after the bus driver saw her and reported, there was nothing.
Yeah. And there was recent snowfall. So it's not like she just ran right into the woods right there. There were some woods right there. It's not the mountains like it might sound right there. There's like 4 houses or so that you can see probably from where her car ended up. So it's actually a pretty populated area of
It's
what
just
is
that elevation.
otherwise. Yeah.
Yeah.
Of what is otherwise like a pretty desolate area. Like if she were to have gone, like here's an example, just hypothetical. If she was ditching her car for whatever reason, you know, maybe you do it in that area. You could argue that, but you wouldn't stop there in front of 4 houses. Like a mile down the road, there's no houses. You're in the forest a mile down the road, and that
was my confusion. I thought earlier when I asked why there were 2 911 calls, right? Because I just imagined she would have gone out further, walking further from her vehicle. But you're saying that the last time she was seen was not far from the vehicle. Is that correct?
That's correct. And the dogs tracked her scent about I want to say 100 or 200 feet down the road towards that bus driver's house, towards that forest, and towards the way we think her car was headed. And that's it.
They lost it right there.
Yeah.
Cadaver dogs.
I believe they were search dogs who had been given a sniff of new gloves that Maura had, you know, they were in Maura's car that maybe she had only worn like once. So also kind of like an arguable fact of how valuable that information even is. The fact that the dogs tracked her at all, I guess, to that point, probably to me says that I think that sounds about right. I think she probably got into a car. You know, it seems like she willingly got into a car because she
wouldn't get in with that bus driver, but maybe somebody else, maybe somebody she knew.
Yeah, that's kind of what I think. Yeah, now it's one of the things police thought right away. I mean, I think they still are open to all possibilities, but a local is definitely on the table still.
So
Lance.
2004.
So I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Yeah. So 2004 is when all this occurred, and I'm sure that the investigation was pretty hot and heavy at the beginning. When did it start to cool off and lose attention?
Well, really good question, and hard to answer because I feel like the Maura Murray case goes in waves, and even still, and I think there's really hot periods even still today. And definitely, I would say in 2020 there was. For a cold case, now 17 years old, I think that's pretty good. You know, I think it's one of the more popular missing persons cases. They have a cold case unit in New Hampshire, and you know, I'm pretty sure they're working on it. You know, hopefully they have a lot more info than we do.
Yeah, I follow. The only reason I ask is I follow a similar case from near my hometown. It was the murders of Abigail Williams and Liberty German in Delphi, Indiana.
Mm-hmm.
Still unsolved, and it just recently popped back up in the news because
what's the kind of, I hate to say it, that nickname for that crime?
Delphi.
The Delphi. Right.
Yeah. I mean, it happened in Delphi, so
right.
It's not too much. It happened on like the day before Valentine's Day. They found the bodies on Valentine's Day. They still won't divulge like the manner in which they found the bodies mutilated, because they want to keep it, you know. But that's like the main thing, because they slowly started releasing more and more information, but then it kind of went on the back burner because that happened in 2017. It's 2021 now. Last year they came out with a full series podcast called Delphi. So I'm just curious as to like the ebb and flow, and I guess whose responsibility is it to keep it into the public's attention, because it is important, you know, to either find a missing person or, you know, because there has to be a line that the state or federal government draws to keep committing resources. When is that?
It's a great question.
Like, what causes it?
I think I know in the case of the Delphi, the 2 young girls, their family works pretty closely with the Indiana State Police, and I think they really, you know, that torch is carried. I don't think that case is cold at this point. You know, I think it's crazy that they haven't found the person. I don't think it's by fault of, the police. I think they're trying pretty hard down there.
Yeah, because I mean, I've been through that park in that area. Whenever I drive through that town, because we'll drive through from here, all the way through up to Chicago to visit family. Always go through Delphi area, and that's where I grew up. Delphi, Carroll, Kokomo, Indianapolis. And you drive through there, it's just cold and spooky no matter what time of the year it is, because it's just not. It's in the county of Flora, which is calls itself the Garden Center of the United States or something, and it's just the complete opposite of drained of life, gray, and almost radioactive dust in the air. At least to me when I drive through it, because of that secret incident.
That secret incident.
So does Haverhill carry that kind of weight? Since it's been cold since 2004. Yeah,
that case has had a few documentaries that have been made on it. We started our podcast in 2015 that was on the case. I guess that's where I'm going with that. Is the true crime community is something that kind of took over in that case, for better or worse. Definitely not good in all cases. Definitely not bad in all cases. But with the explosion of true crime podcasts and things like that, I think that case has been covered so much. It's
did you guys jump in to the true crime podcast genre, or do you feel, would it be appropriate to say you and Lance, I mean, just being honest and not worrying about being humble, would you say you just kind of led the way a little bit in some regards there?
We followed Serial in launching a podcast about one case. To my knowledge, we were the second, to my knowledge, at that time. And I remember I remember talking to Lance about it and being like, well, we can't do that. That's crazy, and here's why. We got to do it. And then it was like 6 months later that or actually maybe even more. All right, maybe it was about 6 months later that we ended up finally launching Missing Maura Murray. And I do think that when a podcast is solely about one case, it kind of has a feeling of inevitability about it. Like there's some vibe that's different, I think, to a podcast.
Explain that inevitability. What do you mean by that?
Like what's going to stop? The show is named this. You're just going to stop making episodes now?
Right.
So then
and what did you guys end up doing? What did you guys end up doing?
We ultimately ended up switching the name to just Missing at this point in 2021. We launched that show in Missing Maura Murray in 2015, the summer of 2015. And we sort of spun it off, I guess you could say. That feed that was launched in 2015 is still going. That one's called Missing Now. We launched a new one that has all the old episodes, all backdated to the day that they were originally released. And that one is still called Missing Maura Murray. So for all intents and purposes, that feed is still going. And
you would have really disappointed a lot of very dedicated people following that particular story, that case, if you had taken that down and not continued to keep that resource open, because that's really what it comes down to. You guys are given your talent as a resource, and in an investigation, and it led ultimately to you and Lance getting brought in as members of the board on Private Investigations for the Missing, a nonprofit organization. Tell us a little bit about Private Investigations for the Missing, Tim.
Sure. Yeah, it's been a long journey that's led here. Can I back up a little bit to the part where Lance kind of led us into this whole thing?
No, because Lance isn't here, and I think that would be highly inappropriate.
All right to any clues.
Yep.
But it's really good.
Please,
really good.
Please do.
Okay. So there's this video on the internet that's called Happy Anniversary, and Lance was the very first person to have seen this video, and has made top 5, top 10 lists of creepiest videos to ever be on the internet. And it was made by a fellow named Alden House Olson, but at the time no one knew who made it. and it was released on the I believe it was the 9-year anniversary of Maura Murray's disappearance. And it was this fellow in a dark, looked like a basement with like stone wall behind him, and he's looking at the screen, and he's just laughing.
I remember.
He's cackling for about a minute, and then all of a sudden he just stops, and then he just winks, and then it fades out, and it says "Happy Anniversary."
Heavy set white guy, right?
Yeah, maybe a little heavy set. Yep. Glasses. You could see the reflection of the screen.
Yep. Probably in his 50s. I think that gentleman looked like he was in his 50s, maybe even 60s, but late 50s, maybe.
Probably could play the same range as you.
Thanks for drawing that parallel. I appreciate that, Tim. On our next episode, Blake. I'm just kidding. Tim, welcome back to the show.
Being like I am Andy James, definitely my lower 40s, as you can tell by the shaved beard.
Damn you. And you know what? We talked about this on your show several weeks back too. You know, we say if we don't laugh, we cry because of the realities of what we deal with and the sadness of what we deal with. Blake and I are both familiar with that. We've seen stuff. We've been involved in stuff and
some things, man.
The world is big. It is so much bigger than Kokomo, Indiana. It is so much bigger than St. Paul, Minnesota. It is so much bigger. Sorry, I'll call it Plymouth, Minnesota. Call out to my you're not the only ones with Plymouth.
I did not know that it was a land of pilgrimage.
There is a rock in Plymouth somewhere, I am sure, and I'm thinking it was in my neighborhood that I grew up in. Regardless, because there was at least one big rock, and that was Plymouth Rock to me. But that right there is it draws that. That's the size of some people's worlds, where they grew up, their town, their hometown. Maura Murray, who knows? Maybe she wanted to see that bigger world. How old was she again? 21?
She was 21. Yeah. So
21.
She was from the outskirts of Boston and was amazing at track, set state records. And then she actually, she followed in her older sister's footsteps in setting those state records. She actually beat her sister's state records and some of them. And then she followed her footsteps and went to West Point and was there for about, I believe, a year and a half.
Maura?
Yes, Maura Murray. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. She was a West Point cadet for a year and a half prior to coming home
to UMass, the University of Massachusetts in Amherst, where she was living when she drove north about 3 hours and went missing. Yeah.
What was she driving north for?
We don't know. That's one of the biggest mysteries. We still
I've been
don't
up
know.
in that area, Littleton and the White Mountains.
Yeah, not far from there.
Yeah, all around there. I drove on those roads.
There's
nothing to do. There's nothing to do up there. There's literally nothing to do up there. Except
Blake has done plenty of driving through those hills, and he can attest to nothingness out there. You've got so much room you could disappear out there pretty easily. Yeah. You know, you just keep going and you're gone. The forest takes you.
You're saying as a body, as a human body?
I'm just saying as the flow cries. Sometimes as the crow flies.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a mountainous area that is vast and sprawling with hills, mountains, and valleys. It's real easy to get turned around in the cold, hoping for the best, that it was something that happened by herself.
We will talk more about that, the nexus of this as it pertains to the relationship.
Yeah, we did. We are on the board of PIs for the Missing. That our whole journey in true crime led us to that. In investigating Maura Murray's disappearance, that leads you naturally to Brianna Maitland's disappearance. And we heard from one of the private investigators in that disappearance, a fellow named Greg Overacker, who was working closely with Bruce Maitland, Brianna's dad. And he liked what we were doing with missing Maura Murray and said that how do we get to know you? How do we get to work with you doing something like this? And we were just flattered, It's like, holy shit, we're talking to a private investigator now.
They're a big deal.
Private come a long way.
Are big deals. I mean, if you've not met one, let me tell you,
they qualify for a badge.
I'm looking That's right. To see if I have one on me. People get badge envy around me all the time, but you can buy them on Amazon. So whatever. Yeah, but go on, sir.
But no, I mean, I think that was one step for us, and we covered that case, and that was when we spun off into Crawlspace, and we I guess we didn't want to confuse Maura Murray and Brianna Maitland's case, and so we spun off, and we named the show Crawlspace, second podcast that aired in February 2017. And we planned on covering that case a lot, and really just other true crime cases and mystery cases that kind of piqued our interest. And we wanted to show a little bit more of our personalities with that show. And ultimately, we probably made about 15 episodes of Brianna Maitland's disappearance. And we got to know Bruce and the private investigators really well. And Bruce founded a nonprofit called Private Investigations for the Missing, which aims to fund investigations into cases that aren't being worked by law enforcement really currently at all. And that's where we met Andy and Vanessa in working with that. Now that we're the sort of media side of PIs for the Missing, Lance and I joined the board, and the Missing Maura Murray podcast transformed to Missing, and we will cover any case that we're covering on PIs for the Missing. Any case that is submitted to PIs for the Missing, we will try to cover it. We have a whole team in place that reaches out and does independent research, and then we'll do an episode, and that's one level. And then the second level is what Andy is a part of with the Phoenix Colden case. And he and Vanessa are working on the case, and have assigned from PIs for the Missing to that case, and are volunteering their time, which is so cool. And so we will talk to them on the show. And I guess, and so we're the media entity again. So I think sometimes our own line gets a little blurry. Are we investigating? Are we media?
Tim, that's fantastic.
Are we advocates?
Because our case manager, Lou Berry, fantastic dude, and Bruce Maitland, fantastic dude, both of them. They're the only two besides you and Lance in the organization that Vanessa and I are real familiar with. But even in speaking with Lou, I was like, man, this, we've had some, not all of our, not everyone is comfortable publicly reliving everything. And I should say nobody's comfortable. And hell, if I would know, never been in that situation, I can only imagine it isn't fun going back through these things, through interviews and talking and hearing about it being discussed in public forums. But your fan base, and I'll call it a fan base, but really it's more than the fan base. It's a following, man. You guys have a real following. It's a family. What I'm seeing in the comments, a lot of the, you have your frequent commenters, your frequent followers, but
yeah,
there are people coming in from all over the place watching what you guys are doing. That's a huge responsibility, not only as entertainers and as researchers and, human beings, but as board members of this really terrific foundation or nonprofit organization, underserved, we would say underserved populations, I guess, right? Those folks who kind of fall just below the radar, whose cases go cold a little bit quicker than others. So it's a huge responsibility you and Lance are taking on. You guys are doing a lot of talking to a lot of people all the time. That's a huge responsibility.
It's super cool, and really we're only the media entity, the media side, so we're just one cog in a wheel, in a much bigger wheel.
As a private investigator with that organization, though, I can tell you that, and we've had this conversation, I view it as a very modern tool, that is, it isn't one that you would intuitively necessarily want to go with because it's so public.
Mm-hmm. Right.
But it's the equivalent in my mind of those palm cards that people hand out when somebody goes missing. It's the equivalent of that on steroids, what you guys do. And to me, you're just as much a part of our investigation into the Phoenix Colden case as we are. And we've said as much to you and Lance before.
You have, and I love that, because I think you truly get it. And not to say that the investigators we have worked with in the past don't, but and I think they absolutely have too. But I mean that we're there for you to use. We are that tool. Like we are. We like to use the term "shake the apple tree." That's what we're there for.
See what moves. And that was interesting when we kicked off our investigation. We used your network to do that, and your show to do that, to kick it off publicly. We'd already been doing about 6 months of research, but we knew right off the bat we had an opportunity. And Lou, I asked him that. I said, because Lou teaches criminal justice, right? He's a professor. I said, Lou, and he's a retired police chief. I said, Lou, do you think this is that there's value in doing this? I'm not sure, because I wasn't sure, Tim.
Sure. Yeah.
Who takes their clients? What PIs take their clients into the public realm and start talking to them like they're a lawyer speaking on the courthouse stairs to the media? That's a publicly acknowledged normal thing to happen. The lawyers are out there talking. But PIs don't typically get involved with the families in the public sphere. So this was new. This is new.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
How are other investigators reacting to you? Other PIs that you're working with? Not calling anyone out. We're not calling out this call out culture.
No, I think the ones who get it, we work with closely, and they love it. Like it, obviously they understand the benefits. And I think you're right, though. It isn't for every case. And I will say that,
sure.
It's definitely not for every case. Like every case shouldn't do that. Only certain ones.
You don't need a hammer for every job.
You do. Yeah, exactly. So that's fine. We wouldn't be offended. Maybe we could cover cases in some way to bring more exposure, but not shake the tree. That's an option too. Like, it's all there, but if a case is being worked on by PIs for the missing, we're gonna love to work on that. But you guys, like you said, you were working on the case for about 6 months. I think we first heard of you in over the summer, and it was like, oh my God, that's amazing. I remember being on the phone with Lou down at the park, walking my dog down the street, and him telling me that on the phone. I was like, whoa, that's awesome. The first I heard of it, and he's so casual. Lou's so and oh my God, Lou's email today, right before this started, he's so casual about like potentially really cool things. And he was like, oh yeah, the Weilands couple, I'm working on the Phoenix call. I'm like, that's huge. This is very exciting, because I knew the case. We had covered the case a little bit, and I really was interested in that case. And I think there's a lot of similarities to that case and Maura Murray, actually, when you kind of go through some checkpoints with it.
Sure.
Biggest one being the car left. And
that's a good way of putting that, those checkpoints. It's a good way of putting that.
Yeah, I think so. I really do think so. Yeah. So I don't know. I'm happy that I'm thrilled that you guys are on board and willing to use us the way that we want
totally
to be
cool.
Used.
It's the right way to do it. It's the right way to do it. I can't wait to talk to Lance about this too when you guys come back.